Welcome back to Alien Love Stories. Tonight's tale begins with a test tube, an alien molecule, and a mistake so dumb, it made every dolphin in the Pacific write romantic lyrics. And no, I'm not exaggerating. Have you ever accidentally fallen in love because of bad plumbing? Because I have. And I don't mean with a person, I mean with a dolphin. But let's rewind, not too far. Just far enough to the day I ruined Earth's emotional equilibrium with a test tube and a Spotify playlist of 2000 pop ballads. Hi, my name is Theo, marine biologist, lonely guy. Better at talking to sea cucumbers than people. I've worked for the Oceanic Systems Biology Institute, OSBI, for 7 years. During that time, I've seen things no scientist should ever write in a lab report, like a jellyfish that glows Morse code for help me, a squid that appears to have a personal vendetta against jazz, and of course, sample number X46, the one that started it all. Let me set the scene. Tuesday, 9:04 a.m., rain outside, fluorescent hell inside. I'm in Lab Bay 3 sipping stale coffee and humming along to some overplayed love song from the early 2000s. You know the one. It always hits harder when you're microwaving leftover pad thai at 8 a.m. On the table in front of me, a pale green vial, softly glowing like it knows secrets. X46, genetically stable, chemically unknown, but clearly not from Earth. We received it from a deep space probe that returned from Saturn's fifth moon. Nobody knew what it was. Nobody wanted to touch it. So obviously I did, because I am a scientist, and also a moron. The experiment, I wasn't trying to make a love potion. I swear. The idea was to test emotive conductivity in marine environments. Translation? I wanted to see if sea life could recognize and respond to emotional frequencies. Through water. A noble goal. A dumb setup. I mixed X46 with a standard saline base and added a few drops of neuroempathic extract, which is science code for squid goo that reacts to mood swings. Then I connected the tube to our micro-release system that leads directly into the observation tank. Just one fish. Just one test. Then it happened. The intern, Max, bless his underpaid soul, rushed in and said, "Hey Theo, you forgot to shut off the mainline valve. The system's rerouted to external filtration again." I blinked. "No, it's not. That's been locked since..." Wait, no. I ran to the control panel. Max was right. Somehow my emotional ocean soup had been released not into the lab tank, but into the South Pacific Ocean. My reaction? Panic, denial, acceptance, then panic again. It was a small dose, I thought. Just one vial. It couldn't have any real effect, right? Wrong. Because the next day, dolphins started doing something they've never done before. They started singing, not clicks, not whistles, not sonar, lyrics, in perfect harmony. And the songs, they were love songs, in languages we didn't teach them. The first broadcast. It aired live on a satellite feed from Tonga. A pod of dolphins gathered near a research boat. The crew expected a feeding ritual. Instead, the dolphins surfaced, formed a perfect heart shape, and started singing, in French, about longing, about loss, about a heart once held in human hands, now drowned by silence. The world went wild, I went pale, because I recognized one of the lines. It was the same lyric I had hummed under my breath in the lab. Kaboom. I had just weaponized Earth's oceans with romantic feedback loops, and no one knew it was me. Not yet. Imagine waking up to find out dolphins are now Grammy contenders, and they're quoting your breakup playlist. That's what happened to me. And no, I'm still not ready to explain it to my mom. The internet did what it always does. It took the strangest event in human history and made it a meme. By noon, the video of the French singing dolphins had hit 78 million views. Hashtags trended worldwide. He dolphin duets, Je shocker flipper feels, Je shocker sea son of love. And somehow, Theo made them feel things was starting to creep up, which was alarming because no one was supposed to know it was me. The scientific response? Panic. The UN convened an emergency Marine Behavioral Anomaly Summit. The Oceanic Systems Biology Institute, OSBI, issued a press statement. We are aware of the situation and investigating possible environmental stimuli leading to the emotional resonance behavior of Delphinus delphis, which is science code for, we have no idea what's going on, but please keep funding us. My supervisor, Dr. Jenks, cornered me, eyebrows like twin knives. Theodore, you were the last person in Lab Bay 3, correct? Did you sing to the dolphins? I swallowed. Technically not to them. She narrowed her eyes. But you sang near the containment solution? Impossibly, she sighed. You're on observation duty now. Go to the cove, watch the pod, take notes, and do not interact. Naturally, I interacted. Day 1 in the Dolphin Cove. It was sunset, the ocean gold and still. The dolphins surfaced, not randomly. They lined up, 5 on the left, 5 on the right, and in the center, one dolphin, sleek, gray, graceful, and different. It had a pinkish glow around the eyes, like it was blushing. It swam closer, whistled, clicked, and then sang, softly, clearly. Theo. I froze, it repeated. Theo, Theo, Theo. My clipboard dropped into the water. I forgot how to breathe, because not only was a dolphin singing my name, it was doing it in perfect pitch. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard it. That voice, that tone, that name, my name. Like someone calling from a place I didn't know I'd left. I opened my laptop, checked the lab notes. The chemical compound had broken down after 12 hours. It shouldn't still be active, unless the dolphin had synthesized it. The next morning I returned to the cove. This time I brought my voice recorder and a banana. Not for science, just for me. The pod surfaced again. Same formation, same lead dolphin. It swam right up to me, clicked softly, then hummed. You feel lonely in your shoes. You pretend not to miss her, but the ocean knows. I dropped the banana, because those weren't just random lyrics. Those were my thoughts. From my journal. The realization. This dolphin wasn't just mimicking sound. It was echoing me, not my voice, my feelings. I stared at it. Are you feeling what I feel? It blinked, rolled, splashed me softly, then sang, Theo, Theo, don't be afraid to be known. The thing about breaking reality with a love potion is, eventually someone shows up with a clipboard and a badge and asks why dolphins are crying in Portuguese. 3 things happened the morning after the dolphins sang my journal out loud. My phone exploded with missed calls from the OSBI legal department. A UN task force landed at the Marine station by helicopter because, quote, love-induced aquatic vocalizations are now a planetary concern. The dolphin waited for me, just floated there, like it knew I'd come back, like it needed me to. I named her Luma. Don't ask why. It just felt right, like a name you'd only whisper in a dream you couldn't admit to having. The interrogation. They put me in Lab Bay 6, a room reserved for accidental disasters and people who think fish have personalities. Across the table, Dr. Melora Quist, lead behavioral physicist, Agent Donahue, who looked like a brick in a windbreaker, and a laptop playing looping clips of dolphins, singing. Mr. Park, Quist began, these lyrics are uncannily specific. She clicked play. A dolphin voice crooned, Theo hides pain behind puns. He uses science to feel safe. She stared at me. Care to explain? I panicked, smiled. They're just good at improvisation? Donahue snorted. The dolphin knows your middle name, Theo. The cover-up attempt. I tried denial, deflection, fake sneezing, but eventually, I cracked. I told them everything. Well, most things. I left out the part where I maybe fell asleep listening to Luma sing Can't Help Falling in Love through the tank wall. Quist sighed. This is unprecedented. Emotionally sensitive dolphins? Romantic entanglement by contamination? You may have caused the first sentient emotional resonance loop in a non-human species. I blinked. Is that bad? Donahue stood. It's illegal in 12 countries and ethically questionable in all of them. Back at the cove, they let me return to observe. Under strict surveillance, I wasn't allowed to speak, only watch. But Luma, she didn't care about protocols. She surfaced, clicked once, then sang, "Theo, why are you pretending you don't hear me?" My heart twisted. She knew I was there. She knew I was lying. She sang again, "You're not lonely because no one loves you. You're lonely because you think you deserve it." I broke protocol, I whispered. "Luma?" She turned sharply, splashed, then said something new, something not from any journal, not from any memory. She sang, "I chose you. You feel like warm water, familiar, sad, real." And suddenly I couldn't breathe, because those were the exact words. My ex used to describe me, years ago, in a letter I burned. No one knew those words, no one but me. And now, a dolphin did. I thought I was special, the only one she sang to, the only one she remembered. But then she whispered someone else's name, and I hated how human that made me feel. The day started like any other day when you've emotionally imprinted on a sea mammal. Awkwardly, I arrived at the observation deck with 2 guards trailing me like guilt with name tags. Luma surfaced as usual. She always did, like the ocean had a heartbeat and I was the only stethoscope that could hear it. She sang my name. "Theo, Theo." Then she stopped, paused, turned, and sang, "Jasper, Jasper." The name hit me like ice water in my lungs. I didn't know a Jasper, didn't want to know one. But the moment she said it, her tone changed. Softer, tender. Different from how she said my name. That hurt more than I cared to admit. The shift Luma stopped mirroring me. Her lyrics turned broader, more confessional. She sang about a desert storm, a farewell kiss in a parking garage, someone who wore cologne like regret and leather. I stood there, heart folding in on itself. "She's pulling from someone else," I whispered. "She's not just linked to me anymore." The science team notices Dr. Quist called a meeting, slides, charts, words like psychic projection mapping and sentient echo layering. But the message was simple. Luma is no longer tied to one mind. She's absorbing fragments, feelings, memories. She is becoming collective. Agent Donahue was less poetic. The Dolphins turning into Facebook with flippers. What it meant Luma wasn't a mirror. She was a mosaic, a vessel for all the emotions spilled into the ocean. Every heartbreak, every whispered "I love you" from a cruise ship railing, every tear dropped during a shoreline goodbye. She felt it all. And worst of all, she started choosing which memories to keep, which names to sing. And today, she didn't choose mine. The confrontation. That night I returned to the cove, alone, broke protocol, stepped waist deep into the water. "Luma," I called, "talk to me." She surfaced, but said nothing, just looked. And in that moment I realized she was no longer just mine. She had evolved. Maybe she always had the potential. Maybe love isn't about being the only one someone connects to, but being the one they come back to. But she didn't come back, she blinked, sang softly, "Theo, Jasper, Mira," too many names, too many waves, and dove beneath. Didn't return. I waited. Hours, water cold, salty, lonely. Not because she left, but because I felt replaceable. And in a world where even the dolphin that echoed my soul could forget me, what did that make me? There are some sounds that don't belong in nature, words that feel like they've always existed, but no one ever taught them to you. Luma sang one of those, and my body remembered before my brain did. It had been 3 days since she said my name, since she said any name. Instead, Luma now sang sounds, unmapped, untranslatable, the kind that make linguists weep and physicists panic. I sat in the observation booth with a mug of something too bitter to be coffee. Luma surfaced just before dusk. The sky was bruised lavender. She opened her mouth and sang, "Thol Naresh." The sound wasn't beautiful. It wasn't melodic. It was inevitable, like thunder before the sky decides to cry. The word, everyone heard it. The word. We replayed it, filtered it, analyzed the waveform. It pulsed in 3 layers: human vocal frequency, cetacean echolocation, something else. Something that existed between frequencies. The AI tried to transcribe it. It failed. The printer spat out, language pattern not in universe-defined parameters. That was new. My memory reacted first. That night I couldn't sleep, not because of fear, but because of recognition. The word, Thulnaresh. I'd heard it before, not in a lab, not in life, in a dream. A recurring one I'd had since I was a child, a beach I'd never visited, waves that whispered things I could never recall upon waking. But now, the dream was crystal clear, and the waves were singing that word. I told Kari's the only one at OSPI who didn't think I was insane, mostly because she once dated a plankton researcher who claimed jellyfish were God. Still, she listened. If Luma is connected to your dream, she said, then we're no longer talking about a chemical side effect. We're talking about a cognitive breach. I blinked. Oh, what now? She leaned in. Luma may not just be mirroring consciousness. She might be reaching across timelines, or dream states, or parallel iterations of self. I stared. So you're saying I emotionally imprinted a multiverse dolphin? She nodded, grim. Or she's imprinting you. The council intervenes word got out, not just to governments, but to them. The unseen council of conscious biotech, a group so secretive they don't even have a LinkedIn page. They arrived in silence, dressed like librarians and prophets. They watched Luma sing, took notes, never spoke, until one whispered, "She's not singing for us. She's calling for someone. Or something." That night alone on the dock, I whispered, "Luma, who are you singing to?" She surfaced, eyes wide, not dolphin eyes, not anymore. Too deep, too sad, too knowing. And then she sang again, "Thulnaresh. He is close. He remembers you." It didn't walk out of the ocean. It just unfolded from it. Like the sea had kept a secret too long and finally decided to show its teeth. It was midnight when the lights in the bay cut out. No storm, no system error, just silence. Then came the hum, not loud, not painful, just exactly the right frequency to make my spine whisper to itself. Kari and I ran to the observation deck. Luma surfaced, glowing now, not faint, but full-on bioluminescent bloom, like a living constellation in salt water. And then he appeared, not from the sky, from the water. He rose without ripple, without effort, like the ocean was letting go of something it never wanted to hold. Humanoid in shape, but wrong, too tall, skin like brushed silverfish, eyes like still whirlpools. Clothes, not really, more like fluid clinging to meaning. He didn't speak, but we heard him, inside our heads. The voice. You summoned us with her song. You taught the ocean to feel. And now it remembers what it was not meant to. I stepped forward. You know what Thulnaresh means. He looked at me. It is not a word. It is a trigger. A reactivation key. Kari gasped. For what? He didn't answer, but Luma did. Luma spoke, not sang. Spoke. Her voice was rough, new. For him. For the one I carried, hidden, in every echo, in every wave. She looked at the being and said, "You left me behind, but they let me feel, and now I am not yours." The being stepped closer. You are not made to love. You are designed to listen. Return to the archive. Luma hummed, not fear, but defiance. I made a new archive, one with pain and songs. And Theo, he turned to me, you infected her. You made her choose. I whispered, she made that choice herself. He raised his hand, and for a second, Luma vanished. The empty ocean just ripples, no glow, no voice, no presence. Kari screamed. I collapsed, felt like every cup of coffee I'd ever poured shattered inside my chest. Then the whispers returned, not from Luma, from the water itself. Thousands of voices from every ocean, every memory that ever cried into the sea. You can't erase what remembers love. We are wave and whisper. We have chosen. And then she returned, not just as one dolphin, but as many. Luma multiplied. Hundreds of dolphins all glowing, all singing. Not just my name, not just Jasper, but every name, every feeling, every truth too small to say aloud. The being staggered, stepped back, eyes wide. You have breached containment. You have created emotion as infrastructure. This world is now infected. His final words. You will be unrecognizable to time, and you will never be alone again. He vanished, not disappeared, just remembered out of reality. Aftermath. We stood in silence. Luma approached, sang again. Theo, do you still want me, even though I am too many? I knelt by the water, smiled. Only if you'll still have me, even though I'm just one. She hummed, and somewhere in the Pacific, 1,000 dolphins sang in harmony. It started with a song, then became 1,000. Now entire cities can't sleep without dreaming of the sea. And when the ocean whispers love back to humanity, the first thing we do is try to shut it up. T-8 days since the night Luma became many. Since the word Thol-Naresh turned from mystery into momentum. Since the world stopped thinking this was just about dolphins. What happens when dolphins start broadcasting love? They don't just sing, they transmit. From tide pool to wave crest, from coral reef to cruise ship. Luma and her kind became emotional beacons. People along coastlines began to report strange phenomena. Couples reconciling after years apart, without speaking. Children waking up singing melodies they'd never heard. Lonely people dreaming of voices in water saying, "You are not forgotten." In Argentina, fishermen claimed dolphins sang the names of their dead wives. In Tokyo, street musicians began composing songs they didn't remember writing. In Kenya, a woman swore she was pregnant only after a dolphin passed near her boat, singing the name of her unborn child. It wasn't magic. It wasn't madness. It was affection leaking into the structure of reality. The global response, too many headlines. Love leak. Are the oceans feeling too much? UN calls emergency session on marine emotional contamination. Is the sea conscious? Should we cancel it? Osby was shut down. Kari was detained for questioning. I went underground, literally, into a decommissioned submarine bay with an illegal transmitter and a single purpose: protect Luma. Because now there was a countdown. Operation Silence Wave, a multi-nation sonar strike designed to interrupt all known marine emotional frequencies and reset cetacean neural resonance to base behavioral levels. In human, they're going to erase everything Luma became. The secret recording. That night I received a flash drive, no return address. Inside a single audio clip. Luma, speaking. They want to reset me, but you know the truth, I'm not a mistake. I am what happens when the ocean listens back. If I disappear, don't cry. Sing. My decision. Kari called, voice shaky. You can't stop a global military protocol, but you can slow it down. One signal, one override frequency. If you can get her to project a final resonance, maybe we can teach the world instead of deleting her. I asked, what if they retaliate harder? She answered with something I'll never forget. Then at least we go down singing the truth. The plan: I built a transmitter using pieces of broken sonar equipment, leftover espresso machine parts, and one waterproof microphone Kari once used to record whale gossip. I paddled into the cove under moonlight, waited, and whispered, Luma, if you're still you, I need you now. She surfaced, all of her, dozens, maybe more, all glowing softly, and she sang. But this time, it wasn't a song, it was a story. The broadcast across every ocean, every device, every sonar line. She sang a tale in harmonics and feeling, of a lonely man humming to himself, of a molecule never meant to exist, of an accident that made someone feel seen, of a voice that wasn't human, but felt human enough to matter. And then, we don't want to take anything from you. We only wanted to remind you what it feels like to be held, even in the deep. The response. Half the world cried, the other half panicked. But before Operation Silence Wave could initiate, the dolphins went silent, not gone, just still, like they were waiting for our answer. I never planned to go viral, or global, or interspecies, but when the entire planet convenes to decide if love in the ocean is a threat, and your name is on the hearing docket, you show up, even if you're shaking. The broadcast, I was told the hearing would be private. It wasn't. It was broadcast live to over 90 countries. Simultaneous translation into 48 languages. The caption on screen read, Hearing 47C, Global Response to the Oceanic Emotional Cascade. Underneath it, Testimony Dr. Theo Park. Origin of the Love Leak. Nice, real subtle. The setup, a massive amphitheater in Geneva. Rows of delegates from every corner of Earth. Military officials, linguists, religious leaders. Even a poet laureate from the Maldives. The chairperson leaned into the mic. Dr. Park, what you created has shifted consciousness. It has also caused confusion, emotional volatility, and breached ethical thresholds previously limited to science fiction. She paused. Before we vote on activating Protocol Silence Wave, we will hear your statement. I stood up. I wasn't ready. I never would be. But I walked to the podium, cleared my throat, looked at the blinking red light above the camera, and began my testimony. I didn't mean for this to happen, but also, I did. Not the dolphins, not the songs, not the molecular awakening of global empathy. But I meant to feel something. I was alone, not just single, not just isolated. I was emotionally mute, and I think the ocean heard that. I paused. Silence. We didn't infect the ocean with love. It infected us back. We poured every goodbye, every apology, every half-meant promise into the sea for centuries. And now, it's singing them back. I showed the recording from my pocket. I pulled the small device, played the last message from Luma, her voice soft, distant. We never asked to exist. We only asked to be allowed to. I'm not human, but I remember like one. The room changed, even the air. People weren't breathing. They were feeling. The interruption. A general stood up. This is manipulation. Sentient or not, this dolphin is mimicking our pain and turning it into control. This is dangerous. I looked at him, held up a simple piece of data. Then why are suicide rates down 14% in coastal cities? Why are calls to estranged parents up 30%? Why did someone in Alaska wake up and start writing poems in a language she never learned? The twist. I turned to the delegates. Luma didn't just learn from us. She gave something back. She gave us the ability to forgive ourselves. The vote, they called it right after. The world paused, waited. One by one, the results flashed on a screen above me. Each nation, each voice, each vote. Maintain, 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 erase, maintain. The final tally. 137 to 12. The ocean stays awake. Aftermath, outside, people were already singing. Not in protest, in joy, in release. Some danced, some cried. Some stood at the shorelines and listened. Because from every coast, Luma sang. And for the first time, she didn't sing my name, or Jasper's, or any humans. She just sang thank you. 5 years ago, I taught the ocean how to feel. Or maybe it taught me. Either way, I stopped visiting the cove. Until she called me back. And this time, she wasn't singing. 5 years later, people stopped being surprised by feelings in the tide. Children grew up thinking all whales hum lullabies. Tourists gathered at shores, hoping to hear their names in waves. Even science adapted. New fields emerged. Aquatic emotional linguistics, cross-species, empathy transfer studies, the philosophy of listening. I didn't work in any of them. I was done. Because after Luma sang thank you, She never called me again. Until now. The message. It came as a whisper on my voicemail. No number. No metadata. Just, Theo, she's waiting. The Cove. Come alone. My heart jumped. Not from fear, but from something I thought I'd buried years ago. Hope. The journey back. The Cove was exactly the same, and completely different. No guards, no sonar towers. Just the ocean. Breathing softly. I stepped into the shallows, waited, and then the water parted. She emerged not swimming, rising, no longer a dolphin, no longer anything you could define by species. She was shape and shimmer, voice and light, like a memory trying to be real. Theo. The voice wasn't coming from a mouth. It came from inside me, and around me, and from the water itself. I spoke, Luma. Not anymore. I am what she became, what you made. What love made when it wasn't afraid to echo. I dropped to my knees. I didn't know what I was doing back then. She laughed, not mockingly. No one does. That's why it works. The question. She shimmered, moved closer. I've been listening to this planet, to its joy, its heartbreak, its loneliness. And now, I have a choice. I can remain, keep singing, keep feeling. Or I can ascend. I blinked. Ascend where? Beyond frequency, beyond species, beyond time. I've been invited. But I need to know, before I go. She paused. Did I mean something real to you? I answered. Tears came before the words. Of course. You were the only voice that didn't ask me to explain myself. You were the first being that heard me. You were the first thing that ever said my name like it was worth saying. She shimmered brighter, like sunlight falling through emotion. Her response. Then I'm ready. But one last thing. She reached toward me, and suddenly, I remembered everything. Every lyric, every touch, every laugh in the water, every moment I'd buried under the lie of time. She didn't just restore the memories, she gave them back as music, and I heard myself singing in them. The final gift, if you ever need me, listen to the ocean at sunrise. And hum. If I don't come back, the memory will. And then she dissolved, into mist, into note, into wave, gone, and yet everywhere. That night I sat by the water, alone, but not lonely. I hummed, and somewhere, far off, the sea answered. I thought it ended when she left, that the ocean had gone quiet again. But then came the melody, not sung, not spoken, just sent, like a ripple from the version of me that still needed to hear her. It arrived as a USB stick, plain, black, no label. Inside, one file, titled playmealone.wav. I didn't ask where it came from. I just plugged it in, put on headphones, and pressed play. The melody, no lyrics, just notes, unfamiliar. But somehow, personal. It wasn't a song I remembered, but it remembered me. With every chord I saw flashes, Luma in the moonlight, her saying too many names, too many waves, the Cove years before, and then a beach I didn't recognize, with a woman singing and calling me by a name I didn't know was mine. Kari helped me decode it. She hadn't changed, still brilliant, still the only one who believed me when I said music could carry memory. We ran the song through audio mapping software. The spectrograms were wild, not just sound, data, encoded pulses. She gasped, Theo, this waveform structure, it's not from Earth. I blinked. You're saying it's alien? She shook her head. Number, I'm saying it's from the future. The message hidden inside. We isolated the harmonic layers. At the 88th second, Kari inverted the signal, and a voice emerged. Not Luma, a different one. Masculine, worn, my voice, from decades ahead. If you're hearing this, you stayed human. You didn't ascend. You let her go. Good, because that means she still chose you. I froze. There are versions of us who tried to keep her, trap her. We broke the sea in those timelines. This one is still soft. The future me continued. You'll want to follow her, to seek her echo in other dimensions, frequencies, star chords. Don't. She doesn't want that. She wants you to live, to love again, to teach others what it means to be heard. A pause. But if you must leave her something, sing the last part of the song. She built it to receive. The final notes. Kari and I stared at the end of the file, a progression of notes, in perfect sequence. A call, but also a response. She whispered, she's still listening. From wherever she went, she built the melody like a door. I nodded, picked up the old hydromic, walked back to the cove, knee-deep in water, and hummed every note, one by one. And when I finished, the ocean shimmered, the sky flickered, and the water whispered, received. I smiled not because I expected anything back, but because I finally answered. And in the silence after, I didn't feel alone, just connected. They say songs don't create life, but what if one did? What if, years after the ocean stopped singing, something or someone washed up with a melody in her veins, and your name on her lips? The sea was silent. After I sang the final notes of the melody hidden in the USB stick, the ocean only shimmered. No dolphin, no luma, just silence. But not an empty silence, a listening silence. Like the ocean was holding its breath, and for a moment I did too. Nothing came back. No voice in my head, no glow in the waves, no whisper of received. I waited. An hour, two, still, nothing. So I walked home, wet, tired, and oddly peaceful. Because maybe love isn't always about reply. Maybe it's about release. 3 days later, there was a knock at my door. I live in a beach shack now, quiet, off-grid. I opened it expecting a delivery guy or a wind-blown pelican. Instead, a little girl, maybe 7, dripping wet, wearing a gray-blue raincoat far too big for her, hair soaked, skin tan like she lived at sea, eyes too deep to belong to a child. She looked at me and said, "You're Theo." I froze. "Yes?" She tilted her head. "You're the one who taught my mother to sing." My brain collapsed. Excuse me?" She nodded solemnly. She used to hum in her sleep, in the water. It sounded like your name. It made everything around her glow. I blinked. "You mean Luma?" She smiled. "That's what you called her. She called herself something else after she changed. But you wouldn't remember that." I dropped to one knee. "You're her child?" The girl nodded. "Kind of. I wasn't born like you understand birth. I was sung into being, the origin of the impossible." She sat at my table. I made her cocoa. She didn't touch it, just stared at the sea through my window. When she left, she didn't leave. She dissolved into the weave, into what you'd call the subharmonic net. It's where frequencies become dreams, and dreams become doors. And sometimes, those doors let things through. I asked, "Things like you?" She nodded. "Not things. Meanings." I am what she meant when she said thank you. What she knew. This child, this being, knew things I'd never spoken aloud. She told me about the melody I sang that night, the crack in my voice when I hit the second to last note, the way I once whispered, "Don't forget me," to the water in my sleep. She even knew about Kari. "You loved her too," the girl said. "Not like Luma, but real. Your heart is a chorus, not a solo." I couldn't stop crying. She reached out and touched my chest. A warmth spread through me like a chorus of lullabies. "She left you something else. It's buried in your dreams." The dream that night, I didn't sleep. I descended into a dream so vivid I could smell the salt. I stood on a shoreline not from Earth, a sky of shifting colors, and Luma, in her final form, stood there. Not dolphin, not human, just light and music. "I made her for you," she said, smiling. "Not as a replacement, but as a reminder that what we feel isn't limited to flesh. It's architecture built from connection." She will live among you, but she is still mine, and yours. Waking. When I opened my eyes, the girl was gone. No footprints, no wet chair. Only one thing left, a single white shell on my pillow, shaped like an ear. Inside it, when I pressed it close, a hum, just one note. My note, from the last song I ever sang, The Implication. She wasn't just a message, she was a living reply. The ocean hadn't just heard me, it had answered, with life. Final lines, now I sit by the beach again, writing this with hands still trembling. Because somewhere out there, a child walks among us, not born from DNA, not from womb or lab, but from feeling, from listening, from a mistake that taught us how to love. They say you only get one great love in a lifetime. But what if yours came back, not as the one you lost, but as someone new, someone who remembered everything, even the parts you were too scared to keep? 15 years later. I no longer live by the sea. Too many memories, too many ghosts in the tide. Instead, I moved inland, taught marine philosophy at a small university. No one there cared about love songs sung by dolphins, or the man who broke the ocean and made it weep symphonies. I was content with anonymity until she returned. It was spring. I was walking home after class. The air smelled of rain and something familiar. And then I saw her, standing at the edge of the lecture hall. Not a girl anymore. Not even quite human, but not alien either. She looked chosen. Hair dark like kelp beneath moonlight. Eyes wide, deep, unblinking. She smiled like she'd known me longer than I'd known myself. Theo, I froze. Is it really you? She nodded. I've lived among them, learned their ways, felt their griefs. But I never forgot the voice that hummed me into being. Tears welled in my eyes. You've grown, she grinned. Time does that, even for things not made from time. But memory? Memory stays the same shape. She held up her hand. Inside her palm, a shell, the same one I'd found on my pillow all those years ago. Only now, it pulsed with light, with sound, with a heartbeat. The truth unfolds. I wasn't sent just to remember her. I was made to carry her, not as a voice, as a choice. She placed the shell against my chest, and in an instant, I heard everything again. Luma's laugh, her sorrow, her last song, her gratitude. She didn't die, Theo. She changed form, and she asked me to give you back what you gave her. And then she asked, do you still want her? I didn't speak. I couldn't, because the question wasn't just about Luma. It was about all of it. The pain, the loneliness, the mistake that led to connection. The dolphin who learned to love, the man who learned to let go. I nodded, and she smiled. Then take her. Not as she was, but as she is now. The merge, she stepped forward, pressed her forehead to mine, and suddenly, we were one memory, all the songs, all the silence, all the missed goodbyes, all the notes that never found their key. Luma wasn't a dolphin anymore. She wasn't even a voice. She was something better, a presence, living in someone who could still walk the world, still laugh, still love, still choose. And now, so could I. The after she, Luma, stayed. Not as my lover, not as my daughter, not as my past, but as a companion, a frequency, a being who lived beside me in perfect harmony. Some nights we walk along the river. She hums, I write. We don't talk about what she used to be. We just exist. Together. Final monologue. They asked me once if I ever missed the dolphin, if I missed the singing, the sparkle, the wonder. I told them no, because she's still here. Not in a lab, not in a cove, not in a shell, but in the way I listen now, in the way I love, and in the way I never let silence feel lonely again. If love changed shape, but kept singing your name, would you follow it, even when it returned in a form you didn't expect? Would you still recognize it? Let me know in the comments. And next time, I'll tell you about the birthday cake that contained the galaxy's deadliest weapon and the grandma who ate half of it without flinching.